Good evening, everyone. My name is Elizabeth, the Education Coordinator for Marlene's Market and Deli. Tonight's special guest that we have with us, we have Georgie Coote, and she is a National Board Certified Health and Wellness Coach. And she has a plethora of amazing other experience and certifications that she has earned over the years, and we are just so grateful for her with us this evening on a really important topic, befriending your inner critic. Thank you so much, Georgie, for being here with us.
Thank you, Elizabeth. That's a great introduction. Yeah, the plethora of things I've gathered over the years, but hopefully, today I can be sharing a little about befriending your inner critic. And I just want to welcome everyone who's here and everybody who's, watching us on Facebook as well. And just, applauding you for just taking a few moments for yourselves on this evening. It's a lovely sunny evening here. And so just taking this time just to maybe learn something new, which might cause a great shift. That you can, and the information I'll be sharing tonight in this next just little less than an hour, you can take away tonight and start applying in your lives. And I'm hoping that will really help you move forward in any areas that you're stuck in. So I would love to start. I do have a PowerPoint, but I just want to start with a little bit of a grounding exercise, if everybody's okay with that. I see Shelby's driving, so no closing your eyes. But even so, we could start kind of just getting settled in our seats and becoming present where we are. And if you feel comfortable and you're able to, soften your eyes or even close them. And start noticing your breath coming in and out of your body. Noticing perhaps the temperature as it's coming in. And noticing your ribs expanding as you expand your chest with that inward breath. And then noticing that outward breath. And then noticing perhaps some thoughts that are drifting in and out of your mind and just letting them drift in and out, letting them go, starting to become present right here, right now. For this next hour, there's nothing else that needs to take your time. This time is just for you. And now with your next breath, take it a little slower in and even slower out. And one more of those, nice and slowly in and nice and slowly out. And then just opening your eyes when you're ready, coming back to the group, maybe even kind of shaking your shoulders, getting yourself really right here present. All right, wonderful. Okay, I'm going to share my screen. And slideshow going. All right. Elizabeth, are you seeing the correct screen there? So yeah, perfect. Okay, wonderful. I just want to make you guys bigger because I do want to see you as I'm talking. All right, perfect. Okay, here we go. Befriending your inner critic. So, as Elizabeth said, I'm Georgie Coote and I'm a National Board Certified Health and Wellness Coach. And what does a wellness coach do? So I help my clients work out where they are now and where they want to be in the future and create small steps along the way to reach those goals while also staying true to their values and strengths. So I emphasize wellness as an umbrella for your whole life. So I work with individuals, couples, and small business owners, and we all know and talk about work-life balance, but really it's a consciousness around what's important to you and making sure those things that are most important are made a priority. So that's really not very easy in our kind of go, 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 high pressure, high expectation culture. And one of the main reasons for my clients not being able to move forward and create the life that they desire is that little voice that keeps popping into their heads, their inner critic. So what will you discover today? So I'm guessing that you're here because you're interested in this webinar because you have sometimes that quiet but often loud voice, which is causing you to doubt yourself, your abilities, and is perhaps holding you back from living the life you want to live and how you want to live it. So today, this is a rough outline of what we'll go through. So why we all have an inner critic, how to get to know your inner critic, the ways that that inner critic is holding you back or can hold you back, how to befriend them so that you can move away from their hold on you. And lastly, connect with your inner mentor, you know, that teacher that you have inside you, and start to encourage that part of you to be the louder voice that you listen to rather than your inner critic. So I'd love for this to be a little interactive, obviously to your comfort level. And I'll be asking you to, you know, maybe raise your hands or post in the chat, and there's going to be time for questions afterwards as well. All right. So raising your hand, either on your screen or physically, do you have an inner critic? Do you hear that voice? Yeah, everybody's going for that. So the fact is, go to the next one, that is really a good thing. And I'm going to say congratulations that you have an inner critic. Because if you don't have an inner critic that shows up, it means you're not trying to grow, not stepping outside your comfort zone and really not pushing yourself to do hard things. So all of you have noticed your inner critic because you're doing hard things. And I have more news for you, that everyone has an inner critic and at some time or another suffers from imposter syndrome, especially the most successful people out there. They just learn to put that voice aside and jump into the hard things anyway. So let's talk about how your inner critic might show up, because there's lots of different ways that you might not kind of think of as your inner critic. Right. So first of all, like I mentioned before, you know, imposter syndrome. Perhaps you want to start a business or take the next step in your current business, or you want a promotion at work and you start to get this voice of doubt. Your inner critic starts showing up as imposter syndrome. I don't know enough. I'm not qualified enough. Perhaps I should go back and study some more to prove I am enough. I'm not as good as Sarah over there. Who am I to do this, right? The list goes on, and I'm sure you recognize some of those. And even the top CEOs of big companies suffer from imposter syndrome, waiting for someone to discover that they're a fraud and shouldn't have been promoted. So everybody, don't think you're unique. They know that whatever it is you want to do, you can do it. You have the skills, the knowledge, the unique gifts that will enable you to offer something special. Even if someone is perceived to be offering the same service, yours will be different because of your life experiences, your unique gifts, and your zone of genius, or that secret sauce that you have that's innate to you. So secondly, some people believe that your strengths, talents, and abilities are fixed from birth and you can't change them. And these people have a fixed mindset, telling themselves they have never been good at languages, art, you name it, whatever it is. But for those of us who believe growth and change is possible throughout our lives, allow themselves to push through the doubt and the self-limiting beliefs to learn and grow. So now many of you have been told in your childhood that you weren't good at something, and you still find yourself believing it. Perhaps you were told at school you couldn't sing and you vowed never to let anyone hear you sing. Perhaps you froze in front of class one day when you had to do a big presentation and you still tell yourself you're not good at public speaking. So your inner critic draws on these stories, these old stories, and tell you that they are still true and that you can be spared from that humiliation that you experienced at that time of being seen as not good enough. So take a moment and ask yourself, are they still true? If you believe in your conscious mind that you can learn, grow, and change, why can't you do whatever you put your mind to? There's really no need to blindly believe something that you've been told. Challenge it and see what happens. So we all tend to procrastinate. You put off till tomorrow what could be done today. And sometimes when our inner critic is showing up and telling us we can't do something, it's the perfect time to make excuses to not get things done. Like, yeah, you're right, I can't do this. I'm going to put it off until it's easier. And then perfectionism. It's another form of procrastination. Everything has to be just so before you can move forward. And this really is based on fear. If it's not good enough, I might fail. So I've worked with clients who think they need to get more and more certifications to prove they're good enough to work with clients, when in fact they are plenty qualified and are focusing too much on the perfect presentation of who they are, rather than giving their gifts out to the world. Mothers returning to work is another area where perfectionism shows up. How could the house, the family, work run smoothly without them? Trying to set themselves up perfectly, thinking about every contingency, and they end up exhausting themselves instead of jumping in and seeing how it goes and making those tweaks along the way. So feeling everything has to be in place before you jump in is also a symptom of fear of failure. For obvious reasons, we don't want to fail, but who's to say we will? We won't know unless we actually try. So the other side of this coin is fear of success, and is also very real. Your inner critic is on your shoulder saying, what if you're successful? You won't have time for your family, your friends, everything will change. And again, who knows until you try? And the last one, the big one, is the fear of change. Your inner critic may be saying, what's wrong with how things are? Why rock the boat? Which leads me on to the next slide. So I don't know if you guys would like to share anything that your inner critic is saying to you. And I don't think I can see the chat, can I? Oh, yes, I can. Am I enough? Yes, absolutely. Yeah, am I enough? Huge fear of failure. Yes, because you're so vulnerable in that space, right? Who are you to do this thing? There's so many other people doing it that are better than you. You aren't good enough, smart enough, strong enough, insert whatever word that is there. What you have to say isn't important. And a big one for the people that I work with, because I work for midlifers, I'm too old to start something new. Not true. None of it is true. So why do we have this inner critic anyway? What's the purpose if they're just holding us back? And simply put, keeps us safe. So our minds are hardwired to keep us safe and away from danger. And we developed this skill long time ago when we were facing death daily. Our choices of what to eat or drink, put us in mortal danger if we'd made the wrong decision at that time. Venturing into the unknown lands could put us in danger from predators. So our minds developed to make us cautious in the face of challenges or something with which we're unfamiliar. So nowadays, the dangers are less death-defying, but are no less scary. Fear of embarrassment, failure, humiliation. Isn't it easier just to stay where you are and not do anything that could be a threat to your emotional well-being? Well, yes, if you want to stay small, and your inner critic can help you come up with 1,001 excuses to stay just where you're at. But will you actually be fulfilled and happy? Probably not, right? Got to push yourselves to learn and grow. So how can you silence your inner critic and stop hearing that voice? Get rid of them completely. And the bottom line is you can't. So our inner critic is an innate safety mechanism that is there to protect us. So as I mentioned before, this thought process was developed a long time ago to keep us safe from harm. And these thought patterns are imprinted in the part of your brain, the limbic system, responsible for primitive responses. So that's the fight, flight, nourishment, fear, reproduction, the very things that keep the human race alive. But there's another part of our brain that is essentially you, that conscious part that you can take a hold of and, start to bring it more forward. But it takes work to make this part of your brain louder than your inner critic. So the more conscious part of your mind's thoughts are a little more up to date, which are logical, deliberate, reasonable, and calm. The voice of reason tells you that, yes, what you're doing is scary, but it's not life-threatening. You have a choice whether to listen to the old thought patterns or just to acknowledge them and believe something more accurate and current to your situation. And that leads us to befriending your inner critic. So I see it as having 3 steps to befriending your inner critic. You recognize when they show up, you acknowledge them and challenge them. Is that really true? And then you can change that dialogue to something new, something that is more up to date and that you actually believe now. So let's delve into that a little deeper. So the first step to any type of change is to notice that the habit is happening or the negative thought is happening. And you're here today because you've already started to realize that your inner critic is what they're saying is not helpful and something has to change. So that's a great start. You've actually taken this first step. So recognizing that it is your thoughts playing tricks on you and recognizing when you start to hear that voice. But you're not your mind, but it will control you if you let it. Beginning to notice when you have limiting thoughts or beliefs or are self-critical will get easier the more you do it, and it does take practice. So firstly, let's start to notice that inner critic when they show up. If you've been hearing them for years, you may not acknowledge that this is a part of you that you can change. You might think, oh, here they are again, but they're keeping me small. But you can, and you don't have to keep hearing the same stories or words of caution. That's old news now. From this evening onwards, that's old news. So this might be something that you've been listening to and believing for so long that you have to work hard to identify when you are less than kind and supportive to yourself. You might do this negative self-talk in your head or sometimes even out loud. And I always say to my clients, if you've got someone supportive around you in your life, kind of bring them on board and see if they can help you recognize when you're saying these negative things about yourself and when you're doing it out loud. So putting yourself down in front of others or laughing at yourself to cover up that perceived lack is a common form of protecting yourself from hurt and keeping yourself safe. But it's really not beneficial to you. So let's spend a couple of minutes thinking about these questions to really start to get to know your inner critic. So notice what you are saying to yourself and the phrases that you use repeatedly. What situations trigger this self-talk? What type of environment are you going in that's really challenging you, that's going to get them to be louder so you're hearing them? Because I mentioned earlier that they're typically showing up when we're stretching ourselves. So think back to some situations or instances recently that your inner critic has been showing up the loudest in. And then when they show up, what tone of voice do you hear them using? It could be a really familiar voice from your life. It could be a parent, a teacher from school who dented your confidence early on, or perhaps someone more recent. So just have a little think about that. And take a moment and jot down a few thoughts if you can. And I'll just give you a minute to do that. All right. So always remember that you have the choice of whether to listen to this voice or not. All right, so step 2. So once you've started to notice when and in what situations the inner critic raises their head, acknowledge them and treat them with the kindness and compassion you would treat a friend or a loved one with. You know, they are part of you, and you don't want to be kind of mean and cruel to yourself. So many of us would never speak to a friend the way we speak to ourselves, if you think about that, right? So be kind to this voice that's trying to keep you safe. I like to kind of think of her or him or her as a kindly aunt who loves you, but shows their love in a less than productive way. So one way of seeing your inner critic as someone who is looking out for you, but that you can actually ignore and put aside, is naming them. So I've named my inner critic Barbara. And Barbara was someone I worked with when I was younger, an older woman who was always well-meaningly telling me what to do, giving me advice, but just didn't know when to stop. You know, I liked her and knew she meant well, but her advice just didn't sit well with me. You know, it was just not helpful. So now when Barbara, my inner critic, shows up, you know, I can say to her, I see you, I hear you there, Barbara. I know where you're coming from. But you know what? I've got this. I can make my own choices. I can do hard things, and I'm going to be okay. You can just relax. I'm going to be safe. So just kind of looking at your inner critic in that way brings them to a different place. They're part of you, but they're a loving part of you. But you can also say, yeah, I've got this. It's okay. But take a moment to think what you might name your inner critic. Put it in the chat if you'd like to, if you feel comfortable doing that. And if you can't think right now, that's fine. I mean, this is something that you're going to be hopefully kind of working on from now on. Come up with anything. So exploring the reason your inner critic is voicing this negative self-talk. So thinking about, you know, think about it in your mind without judging yourself for it. For example, you know, we talked about Kristen says Becky is her high school nemesis. Yeah, too right. You know, we talked about earlier the ways that the inner critic can show up. And for example, are you protecting yourself from hurt or criticizing yourself before others can be critical of you? And the big one, you know, perhaps you fear of failure. So consider those beliefs that are long instilled inside you, perhaps from childhood. Are these true for you anymore? What have you believed for so many years that you actually don't have to now? You've got so much more experience over the years that you can put it all aside. So what is more true for you now that will help you grow and free you from restrictions that don't need to be there anymore? So before we move on to the last step, I want to remind you that these thoughts and patterns have been set for many years. So don't worry if they take some time to unravel. Again, I want to say, treat yourself with compassion and be kind. You may have started on this journey and it may take a lot of time to traverse it, right? But every step forward, however small, is one step in the right direction. So if you slip back and get held back again by the inner critic showing up in a different way, just doing that notice, just starting these steps again, noticing, and then changing the voice. Which leads me on to the third step, which is changing the dialogue to something new. So now you're getting to know your inner critic. You know what they're saying and perhaps why they're saying it. What are those kind of roots to this fear of failure or whatever it is you have there. So now start to think about what dialogue is more true for you now. And let's start to change this dialogue in this third step. How can you change the words they're telling you to something that will allow you to nurture yourself and break through that glass ceiling that's been kind of holding you down all this time? How can you speak to yourself more kindly, like you would do a friend? And if you blurt out some self-talk that is less than positive, don't beat yourself up, because you've been doing it for years and it will take time to get out of that habit. So you're trying to think of something kinder, more nurturing to say to yourself immediately when that inner critic is saying something negative to you. And that's going to take some work. All right, I wanted to share a client story with you. This is my client Caroline's story. That's not her real name, and this isn't her real picture. So, but I wanted to give you something cute to look at with that little dog. So Caroline was a really great example of how to overcome a very loud inner critic that had been sitting on her shoulder since childhood. She had her first baby at 18, her second at 21, and she was a single mum for many years until she married her husband 16 years ago and had her 14-year-old son. So now at 46, her time was freeing up as her youngest son was becoming more and more independent. She wanted to go back to school and get the degree that she hadn't when she was busy with her young kids, but she really lacked the confidence in her ability to be successful. She had started to recognize that she was holding herself back and really wanted my help to quiet that inner critic once and for all. So this was her first step. She recognized that the voice was there and it was not being helpful. So the thing that was a little bit different with Caroline, what set her apart, was that she didn't see life conventionally at all. She had always been told that she should do things a certain way, just as we all are, but she just couldn't. She had never fitted in that box and was a free spirit. So she started to acknowledge that her inner critic's voice was made up of voices throughout her life, her mother's, her teachers, even friends trying to be helpful. And it was telling her she wasn't smart enough. She had to fit in the box to be successful. And she realized that this just was not true. She had been successful in so many ways throughout her life, even homeschooling her youngest son. So over time, she realized that she's strong, unique, brave, and smart, but initially could not see any of this because she had always been told she was kind of weird and how she did things was wrong and how she should do things in a certain way. But she started to change this dialogue she was telling herself, and it started to resonate with her as being more true. So she looked at the evidence in front of her and, acknowledging how strong she was, her intelligence, her fortitude, she started to step into herself in a new way. And that negative voice got quieter. She started to see what was absolutely right about her, which may have been different from the normal, whatever that is, but no less spectacular. And Caroline applied to college and is finishing up her sophomore year this year. And she's been on the Dean's list every quarter since she started. She started listening more to a voice of knowing rather than a voice of doubt. And above all, she's happy and fulfilled with a sense of power. And her inner critic still raises its head each time she steps into something new, something bigger, but she is quick to acknowledge it and send it on its merry way. So let's have a little recap, a reminder. So steps to befriending your inner critic: recognize when they show up, start to notice them. Acknowledge and challenge them. I hear you, and what you're saying isn't true for me anymore. And then change the dialogue. What is true for you now? What can you tell yourself that is true? So sometimes my clients ask me, how do they know if the voice they're hearing is the inner critic and not the voice of reason? How do they know when something is potentially out of their reach? Because something might be, right? So when you hear the voice of reason, it's calm and rational, and it helps you make sound decisions and think logically. It usually speaks to you in a warm and kind of supportive tone and encourages you to consider different perspectives and options. It weighs up the pros and cons and gives you, lots of ideas before you can make a choice. It offers solutions, problem-solving ideas. It allows you to make decisions based on informed choices and facts. On the other hand, that voice of doubt or your inner critic is more negative, and it tends to focus on your weaknesses and doubts your abilities. It often speaks in a critical or harsh tone and can be self-defeating, leading to that negative self-talk and, of course, lack of confidence. So the main difference between the two is that the voice of reason is focused on helping you make good decisions, promoting positive self-talk, while the voice of doubt can hold you back and create unnecessary self-doubt. So it's important to recognize and differentiate between these two voices and work on strengthening the voice of reason while quietening or befriending that voice of doubt. So practicing self-compassion and challenging negative self-talk can help you shift towards a more supportive and encouraging inner voice. So now you know the steps to start to befriend your inner critic, so you can stop being held back. You'll be able to tune into your inner teacher or the voice of inner knowing, the voice that tells you you can do something. So the voice of inner knowing is that intuitive sense or feeling within ourselves that guides us towards making decisions aligned with our deepest desires and values. This inner voice is referred to as our intuition, gut feeling, sixth sense, any number of those. The voice of inner knowing is the part of us that is in touch with our true selves, our passions, our purpose in life. And it can be difficult to hear this voice at times because it's drowned out by the noise of our daily lives, our fears, our doubts, that inner critic. It's louder. However, when we learn to listen to our inner knowing, it can be a powerful tool to help us make decisions that move us forward in life. So to tap into this voice, we need to slow down, be present, and listen to our feelings and sensations. And how do we do that? So it can involve practices such as simple breath work, meditation, journaling, or simply taking a mindful walk in nature. And when people talk about practicing mindfulness, it seems like if you're new to it, such a big unattainable goal, but it's really, in a nutshell, being in the present moment. It can be invaluable. So you can use sights and smells to anchor you to the present. Imagine making a cup of coffee, consciously choosing the mug you want to use, smelling the coffee as you spoon it into the coffee maker, smelling the coffee again as it brews, and then feeling that warmth of the cup in your hands. So all these things bring you into the present, into that moment. And even when walking in nature, bringing yourself present again by noticing sights, smells, textures, and feel of the earth beneath your feet, instead of letting your mind wander to, your to-do after you finished your work or what you're making for dinner tonight, using all those things right in front of you to bring you present. So by paying attention to our inner knowing, we can begin to identify the things that truly matter to us. And we can start to make decisions that align with our deepest values and desires. And in terms of decision making, the voice of the inner knowing can be incredibly helpful in providing clarity and direction. When faced with a difficult decision, we can check in with ourselves and ask what feels true and authentic to us. And by listening to our intuition, we can often make choices that lead us towards greater fulfillment and happiness. All right, well, that's all I have for you presentation wise. I'm going to stop sharing in a second, and I'd love if anybody has any questions or comments, or even if I can do a few minutes of coaching. But here's my contact details. I do have a giveaway on my website. Oh, I see Elizabeth just put it in the chat. It's actually a little kind of a shorter version of this about how to befriend your inner critic, but also get into contact with your inner mentor. And there's a great visualization recording on there that you can do. If anybody was interested in that, they can get that. All right. So I'm going to stop sharing, and I'd love any thoughts or questions from anyone.
Thank you so much, Georgie.
You're welcome.
We're going to go ahead and say goodbye to our Facebook Live friends, but your contact information will be in the chat or in the comment section there, so they'll know how to get in touch with you.
Perfect.